Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Roberts. Welcome to the second post-election episode of Effective, Efficient, Affordable, and above all, Accountable to You. The show in which I take a good, hard look at government in Winstead with a special focus on the Board of Education. Now, it goes without saying that everything that I say on this show is my own views, my own thoughts. I do not propose, I do not intend, I should not be seen as representing in any way the Winchester Board of Education on which I serve. The editorial slant of this show, my personal bias, if you like, is that in order to get government that is effective, efficient, and affordable, we must have accountability. We must have the people of this town holding our government accountable. And in order to have accountability, we must have full, timely, and accurate disclosure. We cannot hold our government accountable if we do not know what it is doing on our behalf. This show will be a relatively brief one. It is, after all, Thanksgiving, and quite frankly, not a great deal has happened other than the audit in the last 2 weeks. The Board of Selectmen has met once in a relatively short session, a perfunctory session, in which the most striking aspect was the very personal stamp that Mayor Welcome has placed on that board. We, on the Board of Education side, have not held a regular meeting yet. Our first regular meeting will be in early December. And so the audit is the big story. Now remember, just the weekend before the election, Board of Education Chair Susan Hofnagel informed the community in writing that, and I quote, "I am delighted to report that there is no audit problem with our records." The weekend before the election, Susan Hofnagel reported there is no problem with our records. Now, 2 weeks after the election, the audit has been released. It has been released 11 months late. Now, no matter what the audit says or doesn't say, the fact that it is 11 months late is itself a major audit problem. The auditors themselves were quick to point this out. They cite repeatedly the Board of Education's inability to close out their books, the Board of Education's inability to provide them with the information that they needed, as being one of the chief problems in the audit this year. Whatever the audit says, the fact that it's 11 months late says a lot. But that's not all it says, ladies and gentlemen. The auditors have quite a lot to say. It's just that the one thing that they don't say is that there is no problem with the school's audit record. They actually say quite the reverse. And again, I quote, "We consider the deficiencies in internal control to be material weaknesses." We consider the deficiencies in internal control to be material weaknesses. When auditors start talking about material weaknesses, they are throwing around some very strong language. Auditors know that their every word will be scrutinized by the credit rating agencies. Auditors know that their every word will be scrutinized by our lenders, both of whom have been waiting patiently or not so patiently for 11 months to hear what the auditors have to say. When they talk about material weaknesses, that is auditors' code for "our hair is not yet on fire, but we fear it may soon be on fire." When auditors start talking about material weaknesses, litigation lawyers start licking their lips. The words material weakness denote serious problems with the Winchester audit. So what is all the fuss about? What are the serious problems? Well, there are a number, but the most glaring, simply put, is that the auditors were unable to satisfy themselves. The school board could not satisfy the auditors that $636,000 of federal government money was spent according to the law. The school board took in a little over $1 million in federal ARRA money and cannot account for over half of it. Now, let's be quite clear, ladies and gentlemen. The auditors are not suggesting, at this point in time at least, that anyone has run off with the money. The auditors are not suggesting that the use to which these monies were put would be illegal if the town had paid for them. The auditors are, however, suggesting, they are saying, that paid for as they were by federal grant monies, the school board cannot substantiate that they were spent legally. Now, our auditors are required by law to report this to the state. They are required to report this to the federal government. they are required to report to the state and federal government that the Winchester School District cannot substantiate that $636,000 of spending from federal grants was done legally in conformity with those grants. And the federal government, ladies and gentlemen, is a picky sort of person when it comes to money. Unlike you or I, who are presumed innocent until proven guilty, the feds have a very simple standard. Their view is quite clear. They do not require any school board to take their money. But they do require any school board that does take their money, they require that school board to prove that they used that money in a legitimate, legal way. To prove. And any school board that cannot prove that they used federal money in a legitimate, appropriate way is in for a world of pain. That's us. We're in for a world of pain courtesy of our federal government. What can the feds do? Well, at the simplest, they can require the school board to produce numbers not annually, but monthly. They can demand a monthly true-up of all federal grant spending and insist that that be accurate and insist that there will be no further federal monies until it's accurate. Now, we have just spent 11 months trying to produce an annual set of numbers. Are we to spend the next 11 months trying to produce a monthly set of numbers? Our school board doesn't need this degree of hassle. They can demand that the school board repay the $636,000, or more properly, that the town repay the $636,000. Fact of the matter, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have $636,000 to repay. Blaise Salerno, our former superintendent, in the Winstead Journal emails back in July, may have said blithely in Hofnagel's views that this would not bankrupt the town. But we don't have $636,000 to repay the federal government, ladies and gentlemen. The audit says we have $400,000 left in the savings account. This will bankrupt the town if we have to repay that money. Or the federal government could say, we're not going to give you any more money. We rely on federal government grants, ladies and gentlemen, both on the school side and the town side. Any situation in which we are barred from receiving federal government grants is unsustainable for our town. Any of these punishments, should the federal government choose to mete them out, would cripple Winstead. A combination of one or more would be the end of our community as we know it. Now, opinion may differ as to whether 636 really is a big number. There will be those of you in the community who will argue that on a $20 million schools budget, on a $30 million town budget, that $636,000 is not material. It's a small number. It's a paperwork issue. The auditors have suggested that it's important enough to be labeled a material weakness. But the auditors also don't believe that it is a critical issue for our town for one very simple reason. The auditors have seen no increase in delinquencies when it comes to tax collections. The auditors take a very simple view. As long as you or I are willing to pay our tax bill, we have all the money in the world to repay the federal government. There is no issue from the auditor's perspective. But from the perspective of you and I, there is an issue. $636,000 is a lot of money. Just because you and I pay our tax bills on time doesn't mean to say that $636,000 is not a lot of money. Let's put it in context. Total ARA funds available to the schools, $1.1 million. Over half of it, they can't substantiate where it went. They can't substantiate over half of those grants that they spent them legally. The average taxpayer in Winstead pays in property taxes, real estate taxes, approximately $3,000. To simply lose track of $636,000 is essentially to say to the first 210 taxpayers to walk through the doors of Town Hall with their checks that you don't matter. We don't have to tell you what we're going to do with your money. We don't have to spend your money wisely. Why don't you stand by and watch us burn your money? Well, if our money is so insignificant, if you can't even be bothered to track it, perhaps we shouldn't give it to you. I think not being able to account for $636,000 is important. I think it's unacceptable. I think it's a disgrace. I think people should be held accountable for not being able to track $636,000 of Board of Education money. I believe those members of the Board of Education most involved in failing to track this money, most involved in stonewalling this audit since at least July, most involved in covering this up since July, need to go. I believe they need to resign. But frankly, ladies and gentlemen, my views don't matter. I don't have the power to make anyone resign. You, the community, however, have an influence far beyond mine. I put it to you, do you, the community, care that the Board of Education cannot account for $636,000? If you do, you need to decide what you want to have happen. You need to decide whether you want to hold anyone accountable for something which may deprive us of federal money, which may cause us to have to repay $636,000 that we don't have, that may cause us to tangle ourselves in monthly reporting. If you don't think this is an issue, if you don't think that anyone needs to be held responsible, that is your prerogative. That's not my view. I believe people need to be held responsible. Just as the title of this program says, effective, efficient, affordable, and above all, accountable. If we don't have accountability, we will not have effective, efficient, and affordable. If you want to know where your money's really going, you need a forensic audit. The purpose of the audit that we have just gone through was a sampling exercise in which the auditors ask sampling questions, prove this, prove that, prove the other, and as long as a certain number of results come back positive, the audit is okay. If you actually want to know where the money's going, you need a forensic audit, something which will tell you where every dollar and every cent went. If you want to hold people accountable for this $636,000 and any other problems that there may be, you need a forensic audit, and you need to make sure that heads roll. What else did we learn from the audit? Well, we learned that in addition to being unable to account for $636,000 of expenditures in the federal grants, we learned that the school board is unable to provide accurate reporting of its state grants to the state of Connecticut. The auditors pointed out that ED 141, the filing of state grants, is incorrect and will need to be refiled. It has already been filed several times this year. This is just another instance of it being wrong. Whether these things are instances of sloppiness, whether these things are instances of malevolence, I don't know. And frankly, after 11 months, I don't much care. If the school board can't do the job, they need to be changed. It's that simple. We also learned that the fund balance is unacceptably low. Unacceptable in the eyes of the rating agencies, unacceptable in the eyes of the auditors. The fund balance took a pretty hard hit in 2009-10. The school board took $350,000 to $425,000 out of the fund balance. They spent it. There was overspending also among several of the town's departments. Fortunately, on the town side, other cost centers, other departments underspent their budgets, with the net result on the town side being a positive impact on the fund balance of $100,000. So the town puts $100,000 into the fund balance, the schools take out $350,000 to $400,000. Now you'll recall when we took the fund balance down from $1.2 to $800,000 last year, Moody's downgraded us. What do you think they're going to do now that they've learned that the fund balance has come down from $800,000 to $400,000, and that the Board of Selectmen have, as a policy, decided to empty it out completely? I do not think Moody's is going to look kindly upon that. I am very sure that our lenders are not going to look kindly on that. So the audit has shown we can't account for $636,000. The audit has shown that we can't file accurate reports. The audit has shown that our fund balance is too low and continues to get hit. What else has the audit shown? Well, for many months now we've been arguing, speculating, as to how much money the Board of Education actually spent. Those numbers have ranged on various filings, various court documents, various budgets, various statements, from anywhere from $19 million to $22.6 million. The audit is now in. The audit has said that the number that the Board of Education spent in total was $23.5 million. So we spent the last 6 months arguing about an MBR of $20 million. The audit has shown we spent 23.5. Now, based on the state's somewhat fuzzy math, based on the idea that we should be paying to educate children who don't go to school in Winchester, $23.5 million of total expenditures equates to a per pupil spend of $16,150. We spend $16,150 for every child resident in Winchester. For every child, irrespective of whether they are schooled in Winchester, irrespective of where they are schooled at all. $16,150. And per the state, that makes us the 22nd highest funder of education statewide. We are in the top 15% of districts statewide when it comes to the amount we spend on education. Now, it will be immediately complained that these numbers are skewed by special ed. We've been told time and time and time again that these numbers don't work, that special ed screws them up. Special ed is expensive, ladies and gentlemen. There is no doubt about that. But through this process, we have learned that special education is far less expensive than we have been led to believe. Where Blaise Salerno has been filing statements with the state saying that this district spent in excess of $7 million on special education, our current superintendent, Superintendent Danahy, has been able to confirm that in 2009-10, the total spend was just 5.3. So if we adjust these numbers, if we adjust the total spend of 23.5 for special education, we end up with regular education spending per pupil of $12,400. For every child resident in Winchester, irrespective of whether they go to school in Winchester, irrespective of whether they are special needs or regular ed, we spend $12,400 in regular education costs. That places us number 31 in the state, within the top 20% of all school districts statewide. Now, let's be clear, ladies and gentlemen, it is a good thing that this community spends a great deal of money on education. That this community sees its way to be generous and support its educational system is a good thing. I, James Roberts, am pleased that we rank in the top 15 to 20% of all districts statewide for education spending. It would be nice, however, if we ranked in the top 15 to 20% of districts for education results. It would be nice if we felt we were getting true value for this high spending, if we were getting true effectiveness, true efficiencies. I'm not sure that there are many in this community who believes that the results we are getting, and I mean results in the broadest possible sense, sync with being one of the top funders statewide. I'm not sure how many people truly believe we are getting value for this money. So the highlights of the audit: we spend a great deal of money, but we're not sure what we spend that money on. We're not sure that we're spending it legally, and we're not sure that we're getting results. Many of you will say that this is all water under the bridge. The audit relates to 2009-10. That is a long time ago. Since 2009-10, we have a new superintendent. Since 2009-10, well, we've had a lot of new finance managers, but we have yet another finance manager coming at the end of this month. Since 2010, everything has changed. And going forward, all will be better. I hope this is the case, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this is the case. We will find out soon enough, because in 5 weeks' time, we are due to deliver another audit, the audit for 2010-11. Now, I don't believe anyone realistically expects that we will produce the 2010-11 audit in the next 5 weeks. But we should know in that time frame whether the process is moving more smoothly than the 9-10 audit. We should know whether the school board is able to provide accurate, timely, relevant information. We should know whether the school board is able to demonstrate that it has spent its grant monies in a legally defensible manner. We should know whether the school board has dipped into the fund balance. We will not have an audit in all likelihood on December 31st of this year, but we should have a pretty clear sense for whether things are doing better than they did during the last audit process, the same, or worse. There are signs of hope, ladies and gentlemen, and there are also dark clouds. On the positive front, the school board has reinvigorated its decision process around closing a school. This is good news, ladies and gentlemen. This is the school board doing its job, the job for which you elected it. There are some, myself included, who believe that we have had a lot of discussion already, that the town, through its building committee, have weighed in, that the educators have weighed in, and that the answers are known. I am of that opinion. But I am not going to prejudge the work of the school board in this regard. That they have chosen to reinvigorate this process is, to my way of thinking, an excellent thing. And I in no way want to stand in the way of those individuals doing their work, bringing their recommendations to the broader board so that we can make a decision finally. This is progress, ladies and gentlemen. This is progress on the same order of sending the 7th and 8th grades to Gilbert. It's the right thing to do, the sensible thing to do, something that the community can rally around and believe in. On the dark cloud front, as you know, the Winsted Taxpayers Association submitted an FOIA request of the schools. They asked for information around what grants do the schools get, how much are those grants, and what are those grants spent on. Not, on the face of it, a particularly unreasonable request. The school board has available to it the means to answer this request. The audit lists each of the grants received by the school board. It tells you what the grant's name is, where it came from, and how much it was. Likewise, the state of Connecticut also has that information available on their website. It is printable at the press of a button. Many of our grants, particularly the federal grants, require periodic reporting. The ARA funds, for example, the ARA funds that we can't substantiate how we spent, require the town to report quarterly how those monies are spent. That is how we know, for example, that the school board says it hired 9 teachers in March of 2010. Now, I don't know whether the school board hired 9 teachers in 2010. I don't know whether that's the genesis of the $636,000 discrepancy. But I do know that there's a report that says we did hire 9 teachers in 2010. And those same reports exist for every other quarter. Other grants aren't reported on quarterly like that, but there are audit requirements up front or at the end whereby the school board reports to the penny what it spent the money on. There are, admittedly, some grants that are commingled with the general funds of the school board, and for those the task of explaining exactly how they were spent is tantamount to impossible. But what I'm trying to get at here is there are documents readily available to the school board which will go a long way to answering this FOA request. Is that what the school board is proposing to offer to the Winchester Taxpayers Association? No. No, it is not. The school board is proposing to provide them with reports that fail to provide any information as to how grants are spent. None. Zip. These reports do not break out the grants. They do not name them, they do not say where they come from, and they do not say what their amounts are. This is what the Winchester School Board is proposing to provide the Winchester Taxpayers Association. This is wrong, ladies and gentlemen. This is a step backwards. Just as this school board spent 11 months stringing out the audit when they have known at least since July that they had an error problem, they are now proposing to string out the Winchester Taxpayers Association to provide them with 3 feet of information which is entirely non-responsive to their question, when they have at their disposal the right information. This is just wrong. What are the next steps, ladies and gentlemen? On November 29th, there will be a joint BOS, joint Board of Selectmen, Board of Education meeting to discuss MBR compliance and the lawsuit. I do not know why we are having this meeting. A majority of the Board of Selectmen ran on the premise that they were going to provide the school board with $1,300,000. $1,300,000 of your taxpayers' dollars. If we're having this meeting, I can only presume that they have, perhaps, having read the audit, had a change of heart. They are perhaps not now quite so sure that providing $1,300,000 of your taxpayer dollars to a Board of Education that cannot account for $636,000 of its spending is such a smart idea. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. We will find out on November 29th. So what is the overall takeaway that I would like to leave you with this evening? The overall takeaway is that information matters. Without information, without full, accurate, timely disclosure, we cannot hold our government accountable. You, the community, need to decide how and in what manner you wish to hold your government accountable. Your auditors have told you that there are material weaknesses within the internal controls of your Board of Education. They have told you that they cannot demonstrate that $636,000 of Board of Education monies were spent legally. They have told you that reports are not filed accurately, but they have told you that we spend an enormous amount of money. It is up to you, ladies and gentlemen, members of this community, where to go from here. If you want members of the Board of Education to be held responsible, if you want to see people resign, you have to make that happen. If you want to see a forensic audit, if you want to know where the dollars are actually going, each and every one of the dollars, you have to demand that it happens. I can't make it happen. Neither the Board of Selectmen nor many of my colleagues on the Board of Education want to make it happen. It's up to you, the community, to decide whether you want to make it happen. With full disclosure comes accountability, and with accountability comes a government that is effective, efficient, and affordable. It's what you deserve, ladies and gentlemen, and I think it is what you should have. With that, I will say happy Thanksgiving. We will see you in a couple of weeks. I hope that we will have more positive things to report at that time, and that we are moving in the process towards getting a smooth, clean audit done on 2010-11. Good night, ladies and gentlemen, and happy Thanksgiving.